Hello Sam. You've been helping. Hello, well I thought I'd give you a little update on how I've been getting on with the sock machine, and I've actually got it working. Sam says hi. Anyway, it's been a bit of a challenge. A lot of filing of pieces, changing dimensions and everything else, but the 3D printing has been a bit more interesting than actually I thought it would be. So I will show you the great machine. I've actually made a ribber unit for it as well, and credit for all of these files, the 3D printing files, to Mr Roboto19 on Thingiverse. Anyway, I'll show you what they look like, and I'll put a link down below on the model I've been using. So here's my machine, and I've made it in what's called PLA plus filament, so fairly standard 3D printing filament. Here's the main sort of cylinder, and I've got two cylinders. This is my 60 cylinder, I've also got a 72, and this is the ribber on top. I'm not going to make this a tutorial, it's really just to give you an idea of how the machine works and what's been going on making it. One of the things I have found particularly important on this sock knitting journey has been tension. You've got to make sure at every step that your tension on the wool is even. So much to the extent actually you can't just take a ball of wool and just sort of like pull the wool out the centre to feed your machine. I've actually been winding it onto cones, and I've got a cone winding machine for doing that, and the idea is that it takes the wool off the sides. No wool is wound so that it's sort of tucked underneath or on top. If it was underneath, it would be like pulling and changing a tension, so it has to come in from the side. But all of this has been a bit of a learning curve. Not come easily, to be quite frank. I'm not a knitter, so I've got a lot to learn, but I am actually learning how to knit as well, just to complete the picture. I'll take you in really close and you can see how the needles work. They have little latches on them. I have fitted a little electronic row counter here, and it's just a little magnet on my mast which goes past the sensor and it counts away. Here's a close-up of one of the needles, and it's like a little hook on the end to catch the wool, and then this latch which all helps in the formation of the stitches, and at the base it has like a foot which helps drive the needle when you're pushing it up or pulling it down in the machine, and it has like a kink on it as well, which means you can raise and lower needles, and I'll show you that in a minute. I'm going to take the ribber part off now, and I've got to transfer the stitches from each ribber needle and insert one more of these long cylinder needles. The ribber unit just lifts off, and you can then see down inside. You can see the sort of like the rib lines I've got on this one. The rib gives the sock a bit of stretch, which makes it hold. So I'm now going to go, I've got just plain needles, 60 plain needles now here, and I'm going to do the heel, which means I need to raise some of the needles and then lower them to get the shape of the heel. So because of the ridge in these needles, I can actually just raise them all, so this puts them out of work, because when you come to knit a heel you just want the knitting to be on like one side of the sock. You don't obviously want it going around to make a tube. So underneath my machine I've got the sock, it comes out, and I've got a mass of weights to keep the tension on. So I've got some old knitting machine weights, and I've also been painting some pound and 10 ounce, 12 ounce, etc. lead sea fishing weights as well. And I have this like 3D printed buckle which just clamps around the sock as it comes out. So look up there, a bit dark I'm afraid, you can see what we've been printing so far. So with half my needles raised, I now just alternately raise a needle, which takes it out of action, and go back the other way. And then raise another needle, put it out of work, and you just keep on doing this. You go backwards, forwards, raising needles each time until you get to some sort of like third markings, which are here, and that sort of tapers in your heel. As I make the heel, the wool becomes a bit sort of baggy where the actual heel is, and if I wasn't careful I'd lose tension, so I have what's called a heel fork. And I've just made this out of, some people use an actual kitchen fork with a weight on the end. I've made some with these little grippy 3-prong bits of plastic, and on the end I have a fishing weight. So I can pop these inside my cylinder, and it's just enough to sort of give a bit of tension to the wool in the heel area. So I have to go in from underneath and insert these hooks up inside. So if you look under the machine now, I've got the main weights pulling on the whole sock, and then as you go up I have the heel forks, as they're called, clawing the wool, so 3 more additional weights there. If you're looking top down into the cylinder, then you may just about be able to see those 3 little sets of forks there. That's to keep the tension. So I've now made my heel. I'll give you a top down view in just a minute and you can see how it sort of sets, and I'm going to crank out the foot next, which should be like 55 or so rows of just plain going around and round and round. So this is looking top down, and you can see this little heel is formed there. That's the main tube. So that's the tube done for the foot, and now I need to do the toe, and the toe will be exactly the same procedure as the heel. I'm raising half the needles, turning each way, and putting down a needle each time, raising a needle each time, etc. One of the things I have found I need to be on my guard for is the weights can suddenly hit the floor, and then of course you haven't got any weight to hold the tension. So I'm going to raise this buckle up. It's just you push it and it clamps on higher up. And that's the toe done, so just the same as the heel. And I've put some waste, that white yarn is waste yarn. I can then pick up the stitches to sew across the toe, doing what's called a Kitchener stitch, which I assume is part of the history in all this sock making from the First World War. Kitchener was of course famous for saying on all the posters, "Your country needs you." So as I turn the wheel, it will fly off. Probably shouldn't have had all those weights on. Anyway, so this is what I have. It's not perfect, but it is vaguely a sock. This is the toe, so I need to unravel this waste yarn and sew up my toe, and that's the heel, and then this is the ribbed length, which has a nice bit of stretch in it. So I've got one hand on my camera, but you can see I can just pull that apart and it gives a nice bit of spring, so that's proper ribbing. Some people do like a fake ribbing, but this is the proper, I think it's pearl stitching. And then I've got to obviously unravel at the top here and sew it down. So a little bit of handwork just to finish that off, which will be a bit challenging for me. But then I will have a sock. You can get, I need to make some wooden blocks so you can block your sock. It's basically a wooden outline of the flat sock, and then you can get it into shape, and also I can press these to make it easier to do the sewing up. But that's the general idea, so I'm fairly pleased with that. I need to learn some more, but that's probably about sock attempt number 5 now, after a huge number of experimental ones. Generally I found the sock knitting, the whole sort of learning curve from 3D printing going through to actually learning how to make the socks has been pretty challenging. I mean, I found there were quite a few aspects about the 3D printing. It was mainly things around inside the machine. There's some spring loaded cams which I did struggle with. I have got them working. I will put a link in the description to someone's actually done a remix of the files, and they've done one or two quite good little innovations. So I think if you were printing one of these, I would suggest you consider the one I'll put a link to down below in the description. But yeah, it's been a good project. I'm quite sort of surprised actually what I've been able to achieve. I mean, obviously credit to Mr Roboto19 on Thingiverse for the original files. Pretty impressive. I did some adaptations within Fusion 360, which again was a bit of a challenge for me, but it was good learning. And the actual sock knitting, I mostly used YouTube. So I looked at videos on YouTube to see how people were making the socks. And I know I've got a huge amount to learn on that side still, and I am separately learning to knit, just to try and get my sort of knitting and sort of general experience with wool a bit better than it was. But anyway, it's quite an interesting journey. I've got to carry on. I need to make quite a few nice pairs of socks for myself and Sarah. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Anyway, just thought I'd show you the outcome of the sock journey, and this is why I reach for my book, just to say thank you. It is selling extremely well. So that's Making the Handmade Shoes, my book that is on Amazon in lots of different countries, and it's full of lots and lots of lovely photographs all about how to make some handmade shoes. So a little plug for my book. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video sometime. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye.